It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show!
Hey there, everybody. It's the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey, gang.
Les Webster.
Hello, all.
And Liz Newman.
Hello, everybody.
How are you guys doing?
Yay.
Oh.
Yep.
Cameo by Fozzie Bear there.
Ah.
Okay, here we go. Hope everybody out there is doing all right. So, what's been going on in your corner of the galaxy?
Well, I don't know. Still fine. I did manage to watch a couple more of those documentaries because I just keep finding more and more of them. It's a little crazy. There's just bajillions of them out there, and between Netflix and Amazon Prime, you can just sort of keep going seemingly forever with them.
It seems like they're making them just for you.
Yeah.
Oh, it seems like they made them all 10 years ago too, but that's a different issue. I swear, I think what I've done is I've stumbled across like a British TV series that was all created about 10 years ago for bands from like the late 70s and the 80s. It's a little strange because the two I watched this week were for Rainbow and Iron Maiden. Mostly focusing on the early years for Maiden. I mean, Rainbow was pretty much done by 85 anyway, so, you know. But there's some interesting stuff there. I had not, for example, really gone past the Dio years with Rainbow. They actually got really commercial after that, and I'm kind of glad I didn't really pursue it, but that's just because by then it was the 80s, and ugh. And then the Maiden one was pretty good as well. They focused a lot. It was kind of strange. There was a lot of focus on the two albums they put out before Bruce Dickinson joined the band. So they're actually talking to the guy who was the singer back then, and they had him. They were interviewing him, and he did a lot of talking in the documentary. It was interesting. It was pretty cool.
Mm.
Very informative.
Nice.
Which is a good thing in a documentary.
It's pretty cool.
Okay.
Well, I've had a very low-key week. I told you guys last week about that Read Comics Online. They have a lot of the older comics. That's where I was reading Vampirella at and stuff. Mm-hmm. I've been looking into the older Danger Girl series.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm really liking it. I just started Danger Girl in the Army of Darkness. So, and it seems like no matter how many different people have been through here and through the series and stuff, I'm not for sure. I'm probably speaking crazy here, but I don't know if the artist is the same, but it seems like the style stays consistent. So for me, it's easier to read a couple of years when it all looks the same. Sometimes I'll have to admit the older stuff kind of loses me at times, but like I said, this has been pretty good. And I love Danger Girl, how everything is going chaos around her. And she's like all calm and like, okay, we can do this. We're all about to die, but it's okay. My hair's on point. Let's do it. But yeah, That's about all I've been doing, though. I said there's a lot of good stuff there. Practically anything you can think of so far I've been able to find on there, so. But it definitely is one of those that, well, I'll just read a little bit. It's a time sucker.
And then 3 in the morning, you're going, oh, damn, I just one more.
Right, I gotta turn this off. So, yeah.
Yep. Need to check
That
that out.
sound like fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. After you mentioned it last week, I did go back and read that first issue of Vampirella, but I haven't really bounced around on it other than that. I've got it bookmarked, so I can do so at some point.
Yeah.
But it hadn't happened yet.
Yeah.
See, I had a lot of time on my hands this week.
Well, yeah, that would have been nice too, I guess.
Yeah. Sometimes it's nice, and then at other times it drives you crazy because it's like I want to do something, but I'm not the kind of person to go out and do something.
Well, hell no, there's people out there.
There's people.
Screw that.
But like July 4th, they had a really nice thing going on. They're calling it downtown now, but it will never be downtown. Downtown's like 2 miles from my house. But, you know, they had a fireworks show and that kind of thing, and everybody was like, oh, you ought to come. And it's like, well, that would have been nice. But I don't live in the kind of neighborhood that I could have left my dogs alone. So I swear, from July 4th until 2 o'clock in the morning, it sounded like bombs going off in the front yard. And I swear, a little side tangent. In our town, a district has started now to really crack down on if you fire a gun, you go to jail. A lot of people, I don't know why, but like July 4th and New Year's Eve, they go outside and they fire their gun. Well, what goes up has to come down. I mean, it's just, you should go to jail for firing your gun, you know. Well, they dropped off these signs, and I was really surprised. Phil requested one for our front yard, so
Wow.
we had one. And I swear, I think the neighbors were using it as a target.
Probably. Yeah.
Right. It made me the one to shoot all the Roman candles at. So it's like, wow. And he's out of town, so I was the crazy, get off my lawn. And one night, I can deal with it one night out of the year, but July 5th, you should have got it all out of your system because now it's just annoying. So.
Yeah, holiday's over.
Yeah, it's over. Pack it away till New Year's Eve.
Mm-hmm.
But in my dogs, they just go crazy. They don't, I mean, and if you think about it from a dog's point of view, that's got to be pretty scary. I mean, like, you know.
It's hard to find a less natural sound.
Yeah, it really is.
And so, yeah, there's no reason to ever get used to that noise. I mean,
No.
people should never get used to that noise, you know?
Mm-mm. No, we shouldn't. Like I said, it was cool one night. You know, I'm not like that neighbor or anything, and I never told anyone to knock it off either. So they were just rude about my sign, which is
Just
weird.
be glad your sign didn't have bullet holes in it.
Yeah. Well, we probably confused people because he flies a come and take it flag, and now there's a fire a gun, go to jail sign. It was probably very, very confusing for the neighbors.
Well, yeah, but, you know, there's such a thing as doing something responsibly.
Right.
And
yes.
that's the deal. It's just shooting a gun with a live bullet up in the air is irresponsible.
Very.
There are responsible ways to enjoy being a gun owner.
Well, and then when you hear stories like, you know, some idiot fired a gun and killed a child or something, people are like, well, these gun owners, no, wait a minute. That's
Right.
not all of us. You know, us gun owners are pissed because that idiot fired a gun up
Right.
in the air. Killed some.
That jackass is ruining gun ownership for everybody
is.
else.
It makes us all look like idiots, you know. So, no, there's better ways. They even sell those little poppers. Use those instead.
Right.
And those are legal in the city limits.
That's why they sell them, because they're supposed to be an alternative to doing something
you know-
illegal.
cops were out full force, and from what I'm understanding, it was a $200 fine if you got caught firing off fireworks. Well, we had one guy who was so mad because he got busted at the lake. Well, the lake isn't owned by Garland, it's owned by Dallas. For Dallas, it's a $2,000 fine for fireworks. So it's like, damn. Maybe you should have went by the rules.
It's a thought.
Yeah, $2,000 because it's like, well, I'll just do community service. You think they let you choose?
No, they really usually don't.
You're going to be setting it loose for a week.
At least.
So yeah, there's a time and a place for all. And I feel like I sound like my parents right now. But there is a time and a place, and you can have safe fun without hurting innocent people around you, or dogs.
Yeah, screw the people. The dogs are important.
Well, my dogs wasn't hit by a firework or a bullet, but they still, were panting and pacing, and if I would have had doggy Prozac, they would have all been on it.
You might have saved the last one for yourself, even.
Because they just needed to chill.
Well, it's stressful for them.
It is. And they all had their little shirts on, and I turned the TV up as loud as I could without people thinking I was having a party. But it still was pretty loud. I just stood right in front of the house. It was pretty loud.
Yikes.
Yep.
Well, in comparison, I did nothing. I've been reading some of the DC collected books. Invasion, which was a 90s tale. Also read Planetary Justice League, which was a really good story. And I'm working my way through the Catwoman 75 Years volume. So it's been interesting. It's been fun.
It's been DC week at Les's house.
Yeah.
How true, how true.
Well, for me, I had picked up another book, and I'm just in the process of starting it. I'll try to keep it away from Les, because he'll probably want it if he doesn't have it already. Is Batman the Sunday Classics, 1943 to 1946.
Ooh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
It's, like I said, I hadn't started it yet, but it's next on my list, and it looks great. So, I've kind of not got those books because they come out with those. They've done those for Superman, Spider-Man, and some of the others. But for some strange reason, I just don't usually get the collections. And after looking at this one and going, "Oh, I need to pick this up," I may be rethinking that. Surprise, surprise.
I know, right?
Alrighty. Before we get into this week's topic, I want to mention, although by the time this one drops, our next event will have come and gone, but still want to plug these things because they are every month. It's our meet and gap. We have the second Saturday of the month at 7 p.m. and all of you geeks that are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area are invited to come join us. We just gather at Wing City. I'll give you the address here in a second. And just it gives you the opportunity to meet us and we can spend some time together talking about anything that's going on in the geek universe that you'd like to discuss. And like I said, it's at Wing City, and that's located at 1456 Beltline Road, Suite 120. That's in Garland, and the zip code is 75044. So, like I said, the one for July is already going to come and gone. But we'll have one in August, and we'll keep on going because we love having these things, and we love to have y'all with us. So if y'all can make it, that would be awesome. And we have the event on our Facebook, on the website and Facebook. We have it both. Sorry, I'm kind of stuttering here. If you're following us on Facebook, by all means, respond that you're going, or at least you're interested, so we have an idea of who all's coming. And we'd love to see you there. Alrighty. For this week, we have another significant event coming up, but it's actually going to be, let me check my notes here. By the time this drops, we'll be less than a week away, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yep.
The 20th, yes. This week we're discussing a piece of history that has had an influence in pulp culture, especially science fiction, but it's something that's been dreamed of and thought of well before the event ever happened. And we're talking about the Apollo 11 landing on the moon, first men on the moon. And figure we would discuss a little bit about the event and how it's affected things in pulp culture, but us personally, although most of us were not around when that happened. We probably need to turn to the one who was around at that time and let him talk about it first.
Well, I remember sitting around. No. This was a big deal. This was just before I went to college. This was in the summer before my freshman year. This was big because everyone was glued to their TVs at blastoff. Everybody was glued to their TVs to see shots of the orbits. You were watching the Eagle landing, and then, of course, you got a few hours of rest before they stepped out. It was a phenomenal time. It was amazing to see. It was the stairway for technology, for science, for, yes, pop culture. Everybody was enthralled by what had transpired, and even now, the idea of it coming up it brings chills to me. Being able to watch man step foot on an alien soil, another, not a planet, but another location, somewhere that man had not stepped out. This made Star Trek real. You'd already taken it in for 3 or 4 years prior, and now it was real.
Yeah.
It was something that you could relate to. Everybody was extremely proud, and politically it changed a lot of things in the world too. It made Americans feel like they were more than anyone else. There was no more space races as far as they were concerned. And in doing that, the American pride rose to a stature that was unheard of. It was astounding.
Yeah, like you said, it was all of a sudden it was real, because up until then it was just it's fantasy. It's only something you would read in maybe a novel, more likely a pulp magazine or something like that. One of the very first films that still survives was A Trip to the Moon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
It's kind of the cliche, but it made the world smaller.
Yeah.
All things were possible now. I mean, even now, I was listening to a report on the radio within the last week or so. Talk about going to Mars, and one of the things they're talking about to make that possible is to actually start from the moon. So everything's going to be tested on the moon and say how things are going to work and that kind of thing, and basically go from the moon to Mars. That wouldn't have been possible 50 years ago, obviously. But so now it's just kind of an incredible achievement, and it's kind of sad that we have not really gone back in such a long time. I mean, there's with all the kind of setbacks and cutbacks and that kind of thing, that we haven't really done a lot of things in space other than going to the International Space Station. I think there's enough interest out there now and desire to actually want to explore more and see what is out there.
Yeah.
Yep, it was a huge symbolic thing 50 years ago for sure. It was there was a lot of meaning put in it, and rightly so to a certain degree, because it's a huge landmark. It's a huge undertaking. I mean, we had no idea 10 years before that we could even do it. We had no idea how we would do it. And we managed to figure it out in pretty dang short order, really. Basing a lot of stuff on technology that had just been recently developed. I mean, within the last couple of decades. I mean, before World War II, there were no rockets. I mean, rockets weren't a thing. So there was no way to launch stuff into space. Nobody had even really thought about it at that point. And there were a lot of failures in the process. It took them a long time to actually get something to actually survive the process of being shot into space. There's a lot of stuff that we just didn't understand. I mean, for one thing, there's the whole no air thing. I mean, it sounds simple, but
there's no air.
There's no air up there. That is really damn cold. And, I mean, it sounds like I'm not really trying to slight the whole thing. It's just there's just the little details that you kind of somebody has to figure out along the way. And it was, I mean, without the Cold War, it might not have happened in a weird way, if you think about it, because, I mean, the main reason it happened is because we turned it into a space race.
Yeah.
And honestly, that was our first win in the space race, because the Soviet Union beat us every other time in every other measurable
Everything
on that
else.
list.
Yep.
Right. It's kind of funny that the race kind of ended with that, because obviously there were still things to do, like the Mars project.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think anybody was thrilled about the idea, given the technology we had at the time. That was probably going to be a suicide mission at that point.
I think in today's terms, I probably will get my flag taken away for this, but I think they're actually ahead of us now. Like, way ahead of us. I think it's a field that, like you said, once we did it, it was kind of like we did it, in your face, and it was just kind of forgotten about.
All right, we did it about half a dozen times, and then we stopped.
Yeah. Well, and although I didn't see this one, it would have been amazing to. Of course, I've seen renditions and footage, but I actually was in elementary school when the teacher blew up. So I have this thing now that I don't watch space shuttles being launched. It's just... And surprisingly enough, the only one I watched was the only one that blew up. So...
Well,
yeah.
They were making a big deal out of that one, especially if you were in school at the time.
Yeah.
Like.
Well, and it was a teacher. I mean...
Right, that was the big deal. That's why it was made as a big deal in schools, is because they were actually sending a teacher up there, someone who was not a professional pilot or astronaut or however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was traumatic, to say the least.
Very traumatic. And it was kind of one of those things when you watched it was kind of like, what the fuck did I just watch? I mean, is this real? I mean, I just remember everything was quiet. And then, of course, the teachers are running to turn TVs and everything else off and get you, get out in the hallways. I don't know what a tornado drill helped, but took a bunch of kids who were like, oh my God, what just happened? And now, oh my God, what are they doing? But I've always, it's kind of weird. I've always been interested in space, but I've never been really sci-fi. But I can't remember what was going on at the time, but we just made a good stride when we passed Pluto. I mean, we passed Pluto, the last planet that we know of in our solar system. We've never seen any further, and we passed it. And people didn't even blink an eye, and it's like, oh my God. I mean, I know there was some big controversy happening at the time and everything else, but it's like, why don't people understand?
Yeah, the big controversy at the time was they were declassifying Pluto as a planet.
Well,
Yeah.
They were saying it wasn't a planet anymore.
It'll always be a planet to me, always. I don't care what they decide or what they go back. It'll always be a planet
to me. It's always Mickey's dog, all right?
Yeah. They indoctrinated me that way. I will stay that way.
They taught you well.
Yeah.
Too well, maybe.
But to me, that was astounding. I mean, and like I said, people were just kind of like, oh, yeah, cool. Are you kidding me? You guys trip out when our cell phones get 2 inches smaller, but you won't even blink an eye.
Better yet, let your cell phone service get dropped.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, people have a fit.
Then they want to know how space works real quick.
It's like, where's in there? A satellite for this or something? They all become amateur astronomers.
Oh, definitely. But one of the main things, I'm not a Texan. I may have the accent, and I've been drafted in and adopted by you Texans, but I'm not a Texan. We moved from Colorado to Texas, and even though they say the stars at night are big and bright in Texas, no.
Not in Dallas, they're not.
I lived in the mountains. That's where the stars are big and bright.
That's because you're so much closer to them.
Yeah.
And there's no light pollution.
Yeah. And I think that's actually what got me involved in space, because there's some areas and it's so dark that you just feel like they're all around you, and it was mysterious. And then you found out some of these stars have names, and I mean, I've always, it's always kind of tickled my brain.
I remember taking astronomy in college, and I did that at a small school kind of out a good ways away from the metropolitan area, and so we got to go look at the stars, and it was really cool.
That's cool. So Brendan took it his senior year, and it's kind of funny. The high school around here that has the planetarium and is like known for the planetarium, the year he took it, the planetarium was broke. And they just got funding, and it wouldn't be fixed until after he graduated. But he said even that was kind of interesting, and it was kind of cool because it was one thing he could finally come home and talk to me about. You know? So.
They didn't have classes on comic books back then.
No, Brandon, not that I'm dumb, but he's always been my smart kid, like little sponge. And so about middle school, I guess, it got to the point where he was bringing stuff home that I was like, I don't know. I don't know. Math is math, right? No. No, it's not.
It most certainly is not, because they make a point of changing it every 20 years.
Exactly.
And so the same thing's happening to me with my kid. He's in 6th grade, or just got done 6th grade, and they don't do math the same anymore, I'm telling you.
No, it's new math. It's like, what was wrong with old math?
Well, it was old, and they couldn't
why
sell
did we
you...
have to get a new one?
Because they had to sell new textbooks. That's why. Come on, people.
It's like, geez.
It's very simple. If there's a problem in this country, you can bet there's money involved somewhere along the line.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Welcome to capitalism.
Yeah, I just never understood a lot of it, you know. And history, I love history, but it's names, dates, and places, and I'm awful with those 3 things.
Those are pretty much the things you got to know, too, with history. That's kind of the deal.
I know the story, I just couldn't tell you when it happened. But I will say, one more off-the-topic things. When I moved to Texas, one thing that is so great about you guys is your history. Colorado, we talked about Indians in the mountains. I mean, that was about as cool as our history got. But when we came here and, you know, started learning about, like, the Alamo and, you know, Stephen F. Austin and Davy Crockett, it was like, holy shit. I mean, they've got a history here, you know. So even in all of my travels, I don't think there is a state who takes their history as serious as Texas does, you know.
See, and I think that's the distinction. Every state has history. The deal is that Texas makes a huge, big old honking deal out of theirs.
Yeah.
And so they cram 2 years of history classes down every student's throat.
Yeah, because like in Colorado, we didn't have Texas history. We didn't have Colorado history either.
Texas history in a Colorado school would be a little strange, but yeah.
Right. I mean, we did learn about the Alamo, of course, you know, because that's all around in this
part
time
of American
period.
history, and it's
changed. Yeah.
pretty local. I mean, even for Colorado, that's pretty local.
But even then, it was kind of like, wow. I mean, I think to me, there's nothing greater than a man who doesn't even know you, who's willing to stand up and put his life on the line for you. To me, that's there is no greater honor, you know. So to find out all of these crazy guys got together and went to church. Because, you know, outside of Texas, that's how we learn it. They went to church.
Yeah, well, the Alamo was a little more than just that at the time. Nowadays, you just see in the front of the facade of the church.
Right.
It was a little more like a fortress back then.
Well, they'll tell you it's a mission, and when you go, "What's a mission?" Well, a mission's like a church. So
It is.
They all went to church.
And there was a church there, and that's right. It's real. It's just blown a little out of proportion.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, the deal was there was a Mexican army riding down the road there, and somebody got in their crazy head the idea that, okay, we need to slow this army down so the guys on the other side can get their business together, so they can actually put up a resistance. And they're like, okay, well, we've got this defensible spot here in the middle of the state. We just need to force them to fight a battle, even though we can't get an army together. So they just, a couple hundred guys went and basically pretended to be an army for about a week. And
So do you think that if the Alamo wouldn't have happened, that the Texans would have went on to win the battle?
oh, I don't know. I'd have to study it a whole lot closer than I have.
Yeah.
But
To me, and San Jacinto, of course, was kind of a, we're going to kill these guys. I mean, we're going to find them. We're going to get them. We're going to, I think that was the kind of the wind behind their sails.
right, and the way we can tie this back to our actual topic for tonight was that,
Sorry.
like the Alamo, like the moon landing, was as much a huge symbolic thing as it was a technological thing or all that. It was the deal. It's as much about the symbolic nature of it as the actual history.
Yeah.
In both cases, I mean the history and the science is all amazing when it comes to the moon landing, but the reason we remember it as well as we do is because it had so much meaning, because it was so different from anything we'd ever done before.
Yeah.
I mean, Les mentioned ties to pop culture. I'll throw one big tie to pop culture at you as far as the moon landing goes. It was broadcast live on television.
Yep.
Yeah, it was.
Stuff like that hadn't been done before, or not on that scale anyway. I mean, you'd get local stuff, but I mean, it was broadcast nationally.
It's probably with those ratings too.
Yeah, and everybody was watching TV at that point because it was such a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's kind of, in a way, that's kind of what made it a big deal.
See, and it should be. Even today, it should be. I know we have gone far with technology and yada, 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 but I mean, any time that we can make our feet leave the ground, that's amazing. Because we are not made to be in the air. At least this fat chick ain't. But I think, it's just, I think if we had the same spirit that we had back then, still behind that program, hell, instead of passing by Pluto, we could have been landing on it by now. We went from cell phones being the size of a brick to being able to be put in my pocket. We should be further in our space program than we do now.
Well, again, not to keep banging the welcome to capitalism drum, but the deal is, how much money are we willing to spend? And what are we willing to not have in order to spend the money on the space program?
But versus to what we can learn, to me, there shouldn't be a price tag.
That's the idealistic way of looking at it. I mean, and believe me, I am a huge. I think that we are a poorer nation by far, but for not having a space program anymore, or having the paltry one we have.
Right.
But the reality is, yes, it is worth a lot to the culture, but that's hard. That's a hard sell to a country that is, I will conservatively say, controlled by money.
Right. Well, and you could just hear it now. What do you mean? You want to go fly around in a tin can, and it's going to cost $2 billion? America. I bet it is a hard sell.
Right. What? Yeah. I mean, well, and what could that $2 billion? What else could that $2 billion buy? That's the deal.
Right.
I mean, there are a lot of other things. I mean, we don't. This is not a podcast that is going to go into the intricate details of the government's economy system.
Right.
But
for sure. But I do think, like you, it is sad that we're not further along.
Absolutely. And I think we may be kind of on the right track in a way, though, because I mean, if anything is going to happen these days, if any progress is going to be made, it's going to be corporations doing it.
Yeah.
It's going to be finding a way to monetize it. It's
Oh, and
the
I
short answer
kind
to
of
that.
seen Elon Musk kind of leading the path with that too.
Right.
I mean,
I think,
he's smart, and why not use his money and his brain to get further? You know, especially we're not using him because he's wanting us to use his money and his brain. You know,
he's in a position where he's got enough money that he can spend it however the hell he wants.
Mm-hmm.
And part of one of the things he wants to spend it on is space travel.
Outer space. Yeah.
So, you know what? Great. Hopefully he can find a way to make some money out of that deal.
And
that'll keep
I
him
think
going.
someone like that will make it more personal. Not you have to have a crew of 50. I don't know how many it takes to man a rocket, but, you know, more of the, well, let's go to the moon today.
Well, in the original moon landing, there were 3 guys in the rocket.
Yeah.
I mean, to actually just get a rocket there is not that the deal is, again, the deal is going to be making it worth somebody's while. It's going to be making it valuable to go to the moon. I mean, the part of the concern here, I think, is that there's not that. I don't know if you've seen the pictures, but there's not much there.
Mm-mm.
I mean, there's no strip malls, there's no Walmart, there's not even any gas stations. Come on.
Not that we know of. I have my best friend, her dad works for NASA, and he's like, he does measurements. So I know he's some kind of scientist, but I mean, he like gets down, you know, he puts together rockets. Well, we went there one day, and he was showing us around, and just the rocks that we got from that mission, they're still being studied. They're still being looked at. I mean, they still haven't learned everything there is to know. So there's no Walmart, but underneath the dirt and stuff, there's a wealth of information way beyond our understandings that we, you know, we need to know more about it. Maybe we have a cure for cancer on the moon, or maybe there's a rock that cures MS. I mean, we don't know. That's what drives me crazy, is we know it's there, we just don't know anything about it, you know. But it was interesting, we were talking about the spaceship blowing up. He showed us this area that I'm wanting to say maybe it was a fuselage. And you know, in those like diagrams where they slice something in half and you see all the individual layers and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way this thing was, and it pretty much took up a whole like warehouse. I mean, it was massive, very, very massive. And it was kind of like, well, what do you do here? And he was like, well, you know, we had talked about, you know, the teacher experience and that kind of thing. He says, well, you know what happened that day? And I said, well, yeah, that it blew up. And he says, well, there was something wrong. There was one thing off, and the one thing off was kind of like his job. He says, so pretty much not every day, but that is still being looked at. I mean, one put together, they still look at it and make sure those measurements are so precise so something like that doesn't happen again, you know, which to me kind of was, you know, that it's bad like Exxon when you have a big black mark on your name like that. And I think NASA, they took that mark and they were like, okay, but we're not going to be ashamed. I mean, yeah, it was devastating, but we're going to learn. We're never going to let this happen again. You know, this will never happen again on our watch. Which I heard of, what, one more exploding from Houston, but it was unmanned. So.
Well, the one that we've been talking about was Challenger in '86. Columbia broke up on re-entry later on, several years, many years later.
That was like the 90s or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like, I want to say it was like 99 or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was like one of the last missions. They were scheduled to retire the program, and that was like one of the last ones.
That's crazy.
But yeah, again, millionths of a meter.
One thing off, yeah.
Tiny, just the tiniest little bit off. and it all blows up. I mean, it just can't handle the stresses anymore. It's a very demanding field.
Yeah. Well, and even with Apollo 11, when I was reading up on this for our show, it said that they landed with 25 seconds of fuel left. Could you imagine? I mean, just re-entering the atmosphere if anything slightly went wrong. I mean, 25 seconds of fuel, that's not a lot.
I fill my car up when it's still got a quarter of a tank left, so that doesn't seem like a good idea to me. But the problem is that the fuel they have, they brought with them from Earth. So they had to blast it into space. And so it took a certain amount of fuel because fuel has weight to it, and that's what you're fighting against when you're fighting gravity.
Actually now, doesn't our space station have fuel?
Probably, but again, they launched it into space. They didn't make it there.
I thought the one in space was manned.
The International Space Station?
Yeah.
Sure, it's manned.
Right, okay.
So they have to launch people
up there,
too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, other than using like solar power and stuff, anything that they're taking with them.
Yeah.
Because there's not just a 6-pack of Bud floating around in orbit that you can reach out and grab.
Can't make a run to Walmart.
Right. There's no Walmart in orbit either.
Give them time.
It'll be Walmart that does it, that's for sure.
Right. Yeah.
But there's going to have to be a lot of people there before they will, because it ain't worth it to them otherwise.
Right.
Yeah, but getting those photographs of people walking through a Walmart on the moon would be amazing.
Oh man!
Wow.
That girl had 3 titties.
No, that was Total Recall. That's a different movie.
Now, something I want you to think about. You were talking about measurements.
Mm-hmm.
The scientists here found the area to land on the moon. They had to not only locate it, but they had to design what the area looked like, what the topography was, to make sure that when they landed, it was more in a flat space rather than on a 2 legs on a crevice.
Right.
So
from the ground.
They were really working at this long before a rocket was built for it, long before the astronauts were trained for it, for that particular, because the astronauts have been around since the early 60s.
Mm-hmm.
But to determine where they're going to land and figuring out the topography of it to me is still astounding.
Mm-hmm. And I want to know what cell phone service they were using to be able to talk to the guys on the moon, because I can't even go to Dallas without my dropping. Especially back in that time period.
They had the whole network to themselves. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, I guess so.
It was a slightly different system, obviously, but yeah, it was very focused. And part of that is they have to be able to track exactly where the ship is at all times.
Yeah.
They have to know where to aim the signal.
Yeah. So with it being a major event like it was, do you think that's why so many people refuse to wrap their heads around that, yes, we landed on the moon?
You mean all the people who deny that it happened?
Yeah, Area 51.
I think there's a big distinction to be made between people who don't understand it and people who refuse to believe that it ever really happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a phenomenon I find interesting.
Well, see, I have my own conspiracy theory about this. I think after what they had happen in Roswell, and the government kind of wrote it off as, oh, it was a weather balloon that crashed, and then all the pictures that came out after that, it was kind of hard for people to go, okay, we're going to walk on the moon. I mean, they were so honest about this weather balloon, and now they're telling us we walked on the moon, Because there was a lot of conspiracy theory wrapped around Roswell,
Oh, yeah.
Still to this day,
I think the conspiracy theories about Roswell didn't come till well after the landing. All of a sudden, people were going, yeah, but you guys landed on the moon. What happened in New Mexico?
Yeah.
And that's where I think the conspiracy started. I don't think that they were really around at the time of the moon landing. They just, at that time, people did not want to believe the government.
No.
Oh, that hasn't changed.
I was going to say, that's a trend that hasn't gone out.
but in the late 60s, that was a big deal.
It was.
Oh, yeah.
It was.
Don't trust the government. The man
Lied.
doesn't tell you anything right. So to me, that is a different time frame than the Roswell.
Yeah.
Because now you see documentaries about Roswell and how the government lied to you.
Yeah.
Where were these people then? Why did they not question it right up front?
See, here's the trick. There were people questioning it back in the late 40s when the whole Roswell thing happened. But nobody was listening to them because everybody knew they were crackpots.
Yeah.
But for some reason, we get the moon launch and the moon landing, and all of a sudden, those crackpots, for some reason, become a lot more reasonable. I'm not entirely sure I follow the logic, but...
Well, because we found out there was more than just here. And if there's somewhere else than here, maybe aliens are possible.
No. We knew the moon was there before we fired a rocket at it.
We did.
And to the best of our knowledge today, there's still nobody living on the moon.
Right. Well, it's kind of like as a kid. You know there's a Disney World. You know there is. You've seen pictures. You've seen, you can see the castle light up at night. You know it's there. But it's not until you actually step foot and it becomes so real. With the moon landing, we stepped foot in Disney World. We made something that seemed so far and so out of reach. Oh my God, we just stepped foot on it. It's no longer, I'd hate to say mysterious, but it's no longer unattainable. The mystery was taken out. And now we're not just here because we can reach there too, If that makes sense. It did in my head.
I get where you're coming from. And I agree that it was a huge, again, symbolic goal that we actually reached. And I mean, I'm still not sure how that connects to the crackpots thing, but
the conspiracy theory is
it's like
that Roswell, we learned the technology from the aliens, and that's how we were finally able to accomplish spaceflight. And that's what they say now. We haven't since that happened. It's really not gone anywhere. The technology hasn't. The technology hasn't changed that they used to reach the moon. So they think, just like the pyramids and stuff, that...
Okay, well then where the hell did the gray aliens come from? Because clearly we didn't find that. They hid really well from us on the moon, apparently.
Well, I don't think... See, here's where people might go, uh-huh. I believe there is other things, there's other beings in our universe. When we shot that sonar off on Pluto, and they played this beautiful song that this planet is making back to us. There's more out there. I mean, there has to be. We'd have to be pretty naive to think that we're the only planet that reached any kind of life, you know.
Naive
So I
or
believe they're there.
narcissistic, depends on how you look at it, but right.
I do believe. Have we made contact with them? I don't think we have. They've shown our I'm not exactly sure. Is it not it's not the ozone? Is it the Van Allen belt that's right above the ozone? But basically,
Yes.
what we have to use for re-entry and, you know, to get off the Earth and everything else. Now, they showed what it was, our rocket leaving the atmosphere that way. Well, you see all these other things just bouncing back and forth like it's nothing. You know, they don't know what it is. You know, I think anything. I do think that maybe we've been visited. I don't think there's probes and all that other kind of thing, but I think they've kind of looked at us and went, huh, you know, we have a lot we can give them, but what do they have to give us, you know? So I but truly, what would we have to give another planet? We don't know how to get along with each other. I mean, nowadays, even a cup of coffee divides us. Our technology, we've been beat in other areas. They may look at China a little harder than us. You know? But there's just not a lot that I think. When I think outer world aliens, I think they're a lot more advanced than what we could ever be.
Well, I mean, and depending on where they're coming from, that's probably pretty obvious. But
Yeah. And I don't know if that's comic books that have done that to me or to make me believe that or think that, but if you're in a spaceship and you can even make it halfway near Earth, you're pretty advanced. You're not a Gomer pile. Just saying. But I think with some of the sounds and signals and things that they have picked up and have even, you know, documented these cases, I think that's what we're hearing.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I was just messing with you.
Yeah. But I do. I think that's another reason why space is always interested me like that. Like I said, I do believe there's others. It may not be like a human. It could be more like dog or cat or who knows.
Now you are talking crazy talk. Jeez.
But you know what I'm saying. It wouldn't be a being. Like it would be a being, but not.
We have no way of knowing what it would look like.
Right.
That's the deal. There's still way too much unknown.
Yeah. Kind of like the moon was before we landed on it and made it known.
Yep. Turns out it's really boring and doesn't have a Walmart.
Right. But now we have HD pictures of it, so we're cool.
Yep. The pictures get better every year, it seems like.
Yeah. But I think
He's been awfully quiet, Thomas.
I'm just sitting back listening to this. And for the record, the Columbia explosion was in February 1st, 2003.
Oh, yeah, okay. There we go.
2003. Yep. Which pieces were found close to home.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, it was literally over Texas when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was.
They were going to land in Florida, right?
They were landing in Florida. So.
We had just built a pool. And, man, we have like a yard. It's so hilly. Nothing can be level. So we took it down, right? And we had this big old hole that we were pitching tree branches, 2x4s, whatever we could to fill this hole up. So right after that happened, Phil was like, you think we could tell the government that a piece of the spaceship landed in the yard? You know? Wow. Maybe they'll pay to fix this hole. And But for years, that's what we told everybody it was. That's where the spaceship blew up in the yard, you know. Because we heard it. That's how close that was.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
they were
to
picking
this
pieces
day.
up in East Texas for quite some time.
Yep.
Months at least.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand the conspiracy because I've seen that I've seen or heard stuff about. Oh well, all this was filmed on a soundstage in like Phoenix or somewhere in Arizona, and I'm just going. Matter of fact, some of these stories, it's because of some of these stories that we got the movie Capricorn 1, which was written and directed by Peter Hyams, because, he thought about that, because all you had were these images, and then you had artist illustrations of, oh, well, this is what's going on here, while you're hearing maybe some of the communications that's going on between Houston and Apollo. It just, I don't know.
Well, I think some of what we've seen as far as pictures that people are like, here's proof that they built it. Les was saying earlier about how they landed this spaceship on an environment we knew nothing about. I think there'd be like test areas, and there would be, you know what I'm saying? There would be some kind of model made to see if we could even do it on the ground before we put it up in space and try it there,
We did.
And I think that's where these pictures, well, here it is being built. Yeah, I'm sure we had to put something together to test a product before we just threw it in space,
Yeah. It was tested. It was tested the best we could test it anyway.
Yeah.
Without...
And I'm sure some of that was ground area. How unlevel can it be before the rocket falls over, Or how straight does this thing have to be? Now let's throw no gravity into that. You have to have a pretty big area to seal off to test that too, See, right. I could see a lot of big machinery being moved around, and which to crackpots, of course, just fuel. Oh my God!
Oh, yeah. It all looks like a soundstage when it's really an experiment. It's not. I mean, and part of that is having been steeped in movie culture for so long.
Mm-hmm.
We've been making movies pretending to do that for, like Tom said at the beginning, a long damn time.
Yeah.
I mean, First Men in the Moon was, 1896 or something like that?
Something like that.
It was frighteningly early in the process.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Capricorn 1 comes out in 1977, 8 years after the landing. It didn't even take long before people started talking about how, they lied and it didn't really happen.
Yeah. Well, in that time, when you're driving a car that's bigger than a spaceship that just went up to the moon, I could see how it'd be kind of hard to wrap your brain around,
Right, and you get into everybody having their own opinions on why the government would lie about something like that in the first place. And again, this is why we're off in crackpot territory at this point. It's because it doesn't always make sense. The arguments that are made don't always make sense.
Well, and when one side's not transparent, it's easy to fuel stories too,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's easy to choose not to believe the government because yes, the government has lied to us before. Sure, they probably still do every day. But it's just I don't know. What would be the point?
Right.
I mean, our government.
I don't see why we would lie about something like that, though.
What's to be gained?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
To me, neither side is transparent.
No.
Right.
Because one is saying, I'm right, and the other is saying, no, I'm right. So neither is being transparent.
No.
I too
Neither
believe
wants to
that
be
we're not the
predictable.
only people in the universe.
Thank you,
But
Les.
But I also don't believe that aliens came down and gave the Aztecs super minds
Mm-hmm.
to achieve what they did. I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
And yet, if I watch one of the programs, they'll show me how they are right.
Yeah. And they're very convincing, too. I had a girl try to convince me that the Earth was flat. For real.
Oh yeah, no, that's actually becoming a thing again.
Yes, it is. And what's scary, yeah, they have very convincing. I mean, at one point, I'm sitting there. Oh my god! I've seen pictures of the Earth round. They even have a excuse behind that too, and it's kind of like, wow.
Well,
And then they tell you
you're,
they have members all around the globe. All around? Really?
yeah.
I'm sorry if you believe
Exactly.
the Earth is flat. I mean, I'm sorry. But
I'm sorry people believe that too.
yeah, it's kind of like I was talking about Pluto. I was indoctrined to believe it was a planet. I was indoctrined to believe the world is round. And that's what they say. We've been indoctrined to believe that in our schools and stuff. And it's like, wow.
Yeah, forget the mountain of evidence that we have proving it. I mean, that yeah,
Or like
because an
space
authority
station
figure
that's
told
looking
us.
at it.
Right? How? That does,
Whew.
yeah, that doesn't. Yeah, that's yeah.
So people will always find something.
Oh yeah, which is part of why the aliens don't want to talk to us.
Right.
Because we're clearly insane as a species.
Right. They're like, half these people think their world is flat. And they're still using fossil fuels in their car.
Right, they're still burning dead animals.
Oh, man. Yeah, we have nothing. I said, I think if we're visited, they'll take China. Or Taiwan.
It's time to play Spot the Looney.
All you have to do is look out your window.
Yep,
There's plenty of them.
there is. I will say, being a Texan drafted in, I have learned why you guys go, bless your heart. Because of conspiracies like this. That's a nice way of saying you're fucking crazy.
You go to every state in the South, and there's a different way of saying the exact same thing that way. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But bless your heart transcends all through the South.
Uh-huh. It's a big one.
It is. And it's never good when it's said.
Nope. Just like when people talk about common sense. They're usually talking about it because it's not there.
It's not so common.
It's not as common as, yeah, the concept, the phrase common sense, I have long ago figured out that's an insult by itself. You are saying that to someone because you believe they are not displaying it. You are essentially calling them stupid.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Is that why you talk to me that way?
No, of course not.
Oh.
It's totally
Okay.
different for you, Les.
Yeah, it's
Oh, okay,
a
thanks.
different reason.
I feel better.
Oh, bless your heart.
Exactly. So did we wander far enough off the topic yet?
I think we did. I mean, I think we could have landed this topic on the moon with the space shuttle.
I bet we'd have had more than 25 seconds of fuel to spare, too.
Right.
Especially if you're burning bullshit.
Well, what advances have you seen since the moon landing? How have we stepped forward?
In terms of space travel?
No, just in terms of our technology.
Well, I know that I know it's going to sound crazy. A lot of like your cell phones now, their cases are made from like, I forget what they call it, like anti-aluminum aircraft or something, which was space tested. I don't know if it's from the moon landing, but
They just call it that because that's what they build the rockets out of.
right. But it has been space tested. If it works on a rocket, it should keep little Johnny's phone out of the toilet.
Yeah, well, we can only hope.
Right.
But see but never mind. I'm not going down that road.
Well, I think even cell phones, you know.
See, I would tend to argue that the concept of the modern cell phone is more a product of science fiction than it is of the NASA program. I mean, that shit's straight out of Star Trek.
Yeah, but they had to launch them satellites.
That's just a matter of finding the easiest place to put stuff to extend the network. I mean, yes, the satellite network that's up there, sure, that directly. I mean, they figured out they could do that.
Yeah.
And they could do it in a variety of different types of orbit to keep them usable.
Yeah.
Right, to keep them useful, to make them work better, to keep the network from going down. Absolutely, but ultimately, the idea of a handheld telephone or a communication device that you can get all kinds of information out of, yeah, that's Star Trek, man.
Or get smart.
Oh, I'm not saying Star Trek was the only source or even the first, but I mean the deal. I think a lot of the deal is that again, I'm bringing up the word symbol. Part of what makes it part of the symbolic nature of the moon landing was that it did happen about the same time. It was right after Star Trek was canceled, the original series. So that's all still fresh in people's minds. I mean, did it have a huge viewership? No, but it had enough of a viewership that that symbolic connection gets made. And again, it's not that it was the first time it happened, but it was enough of a zeitgeist moment that people are going to work more toward that. People are going to see that. They're going to go, oh, hey, well, maybe we can do this too. We launched we've got space travel down now. What else can we do? What else can we come up with out of all of this huge body of science fiction that we've already got? And so one thing kind of leads to another at that point. It snowballs. And I think the moon landing was one of those big snowball moments.
As a kid, I thought we'd be closer to the Jetsons lifestyle as an adult than we are. Which was influenced by the moon landing, too.
Yes. Absolutely.
But the Jetsons were mid-60s, right?
I think so.
They were prior to a moon landing.
Were they part of the race part, getting people pumped? Let's see, the Jetsons.
It could be looked at that way. But although you look at it and they were nothing more than the Flintstones in the future.
Which was nothing more than the honeymooners in the Stone Age.
Yeah.
Jetsons were 62.
Yep. So, again, that's probably already in production when President Kennedy makes his speech. Which, that was the beginning of the program, essentially.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, it's all connected. We probably still weren't entirely sure we could do it, but there's a lot of things. I mean, one of the major functions of science fiction is to figure out if we can do these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's ultimately a form of a thought experiment.
Test the boundaries.
Yeah, just figure out if we can even guess as to what the boundaries are.
Mm-hmm.
Scientists do that stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, hell, we still don't have flying cars.
Mm-mm.
We're even
Or
already
hoverboards.
past the first Blade Runner movie, and we don't have flying cars. I mean, come on, people, get on it. I mean, not that we don't have enough traffic issues and jerks in traffic
And
on
regular
the
cars.
ground. Yeah, let's add 3 dimensions to that problem. But anyway,
But I did hear that Uber is testing, like, flying people locally in town. Like, bigger than drones, of course, because people would sit in them, but same concept.
mm-hmm.
So they're moving in on jetpacks.
Closer.
And to me, as a kid, that's something I always wanted because they were around in the late 50s, early 60s. But they never came to fruition.
Is that the opening scene of Thunderball?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking.
That was 65.
Even before that.
Uh-huh. No, I was saying that's just a really visible example. But yeah,
Right.
I mean that they got the idea somewhere.
They have those water jets now.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a jetpack, but...
As long as you stay over water, it's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't run out of hose.
But hey, 2/3 of the surface of the planet is water, right?
Right.
We just got to build enough stuff on the water. I mean, we need to start building floating stuff anyway, because apparently seas are all rising.
Yeah. California's trying to shake off into the ocean.
It made a hell of a run at it last week.
It did.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Waterworld is just around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, we're all going to have gills.
What was that?
I think I almost made her blow her lifesaver out her nose.
I think so.
I was thinking you went with Gills, and I was thinking everybody's going to have their own Kevin Costner, but Gills worked.
I was trying to stay generic, you know.
Yeah, I think we've learned a lot, but I think we still have a lot more to learn.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How not to be assholes would be a good start, but I don't see that happening anytime
So
soon.
I think that'll
Don't think that's what we'll ever learn. Okay, anything else you want to add before we take a quick break? I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stuff coming up here real quick, celebrating the milestone. So just be apprised of that. I'm sure there's going to be some new documentaries and specials and
There's
all
supposed
that.
to be a movie coming out on Discovery Channel, I believe, on the 20th.
That would be fitting.
Yep.
Because that's the date.
Yep.
And it's more of a movie. It's a documentary, but more movie style.
Like a biopic?
Yeah, that is the word.
And then Mike's out then.
Probably.
I think I forgot the name of it, but I do have it set up to record because it does sound interesting.
Cool.
Yeah. That would definitely be cool. Alrighty. Well, with that, we're going to take a quick break and be back with our weekly picks. And we're back. It's time for our weekly picks, and leading off this week is Mike.
Yeah, I'm leading off. So there. Alright, anyway, I'm just kidding. My first pick is a Dynamite title, and after last week's episode, I figured we probably ought to mention that Vampirella has a new #1 coming out, so we're starting a new series for her. So a new creative team, and like we were saying last week, these things tend to be interesting and can vary widely from series to series. So it is definitely worth checking out. There are also a laundry list of covers because Dynamite does that sometimes, and many of them are very pretty. So take a look at those as well.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm in on this one.
Alrighty, I am next, and for my first pick, I'm going with a new series from Titan Comics. It is Blade Runner 2019. And this is actually going to be the first ongoing series involving Blade Runner, because what has been done before has been pretty much either adapting the book or the original source material, do Android's Dream of Electric Sheep. So this is going to be kind of cool to read this, and it's being written by Michael Grain, who wrote the screenplay to Blade Runner 2049, and Mike Johnson, a name that, if you're a longtime listener and a longtime follower of the website, this is a name that should not be a stranger to you. Mike Johnson was writing the Star Trek series for IDW, the Kelvin universe, and he done such a great job writing those stories. So these two are joining forces to write this new Blade Runner series, and it's so we're dealing with a new character, and it's in canon. So I'm excited about this, and of course this has a nice cover from Archer. So there you go.
Sweet.
Yep.
Interesting idea.
Mm-hmm. Well, honestly, I'm kind of surprised because, there's always been popularity about the movie, but there really hadn't been anything. And even with Blade Runner 2049 coming out, it's been a year or two ago. It's still taken a bit for them to go, hey, you know what? Why haven't we tapped into this a little bit more? I think there's been a couple of novels, but I don't think there's been anything, serious. I mean, any more than that. So now we're getting a ongoing comic series. So that's kind of cool. That's gonna be cool.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, Les, you're next.
I'm looking at Insight Comics for Before Houdini, Volume 2. This is about a young man, Eric Weiss, who has the skills for picking locks, even as a young man. This takes place in London of 1888, and in MI6 turns to 4 teenage agents, each with an extraordinary gift, to solve the mysteries of a character with an appetite of blood. If you are knowledgeable as to who Eric Weiss is, this is the young man who becomes Harry Houdini. So this is a story of Eric's beginnings, before he was a magician, and obviously before he was Houdini. So I'm in on this because I am one of those that loves to read about Houdini or Conan Doyle. So yeah, I'm ready for this.
Nice.
Could be interesting, yeah.
Yep. Alrighty, Liz.
All right. My first pick is for my Walking Dead fans. I know you guys are sad right now. I'm a little sad too. Kirkman, of course, wrapped up The Walking Dead. But he has a lot of other great work out there. Die being one of them. And if you've missed this from Kirkman, this is a trade. it'll take the first 8 chapters or first 8 of the series and put it in a trade for you. It's a pretty good story, no zombies, but so far the main guy hasn't died. Too soon?
Oh, man. We have such interesting standards for these books. Jeez. No zombies and the main character isn't dead.
Yeah, he's not dead yet. But I would consider this one of Kirkman's better works. So, like I said, if you're feeling it and need to, I mean, you do have an empty slot on your comic book list now.
There's a sales pitch and a half.
Right, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But this one has been pretty interesting. It's like a shadow government that works outside. They work with the government, but they work outside of the normal means of the government. And they're assassinators. And, like, the first issue just started off like, bah! He really hit it with us. And we find out there's not one guy, there's 2 guys. And then I think by the second issue, we find out there's not 2 guys, there's 3 guys. So it's definitely been an interesting ride. Like I said, if you enjoyed the style that he wrote The Walking Dead in, this is kind of the same style, just kind of a keep you on the edge of your seat. When you think you know what's happening in the story, he turns it around on you and you really don't. So it's been a really good read. And matter of fact, while this was coming out, I think it's still an ongoing review sites and stuff. They kept everything real tight-lipped. They told you nothing about this story. So it was a pretty good secret that he kept for a while. And people are saying that he killed The Walking Dead off to do this, and he didn't. It was all good things come to an end, and
so did The Walking Dead.
Yeah, he did, and I think he did it well. To kind of go off a little on The Walking Dead, I think after you killed Rick, spoiler, The Walking Dead has always been Rick's story, and it just made sense to end it with Rick. So.
Well, if you listen to some people, he ended Walking Dead so he can go back to do Marvel Zombies, which is coming in October. I'm like, are really? Are you that stupid?
Yeah,
Okay.
kill off a bestseller for a maybe. Yeah, I think if you've been keeping up with The Walking Dead, some of the stories kind of came back around with just different characters who were doing it. And it was just, short of finding a cure, which he said he would never do, there wasn't just a whole lot more to do with it, you know? So I think by, spoilers, killing Rick, he did kind of, that was the end, you know? That was the story. And I'm so glad it didn't end with him waking up going, oh, I've been in the hospital this whole time. I know they don't have to please us, but I would have rioted with the crazies.
And he got out of his hospital bed, went to the bathroom, and found Bobby Ewing in the shower.
I thought you were going to say Shane with his wife, but yeah.
And everybody who got that reference, add 5 points to your tally.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll make it
10.
I'd call it an obscure one, but I think we use it pretty consistently. So, you know.
Well, if they've been paying attention, then there you go. You get free 10 points.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, Mikey, you're up again.
Oh God, I got to follow that.
Yes, you do.
Okay, I'll try.
Have fun.
Yeah, no kidding. My second pick is from IDW, and this week heralds the return of Walt Simonson's Ragnarok series. This new arc is called The Breaking of Helheim. So number 1 comes out this week, and I really like his Ragnarok series. It's okay. For one, not gonna lie, it is beautifully drawn. I mean, he's still got it. Let's just put it that way. And it's actually a very cool kind of post-apocalyptic Norse mythology take. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's very pretty, and it's kind of violent, and it's a little weird, and there's actually Liz, you might like it because there's a lot of undead involved. So
This was a video game at one time, right?
News to me.
Oh. Never mind. Carry on.
But honestly, you say that there probably was a video game similar to this story. I would not be at all surprised, just because there's been a video game for almost everything at this point.
Well, and Ragnarok is just, it's from the mythology. So
right. It's a thousands of year old story. So, yeah. But yeah, I'm excited. This one's coming back.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that return. Sorry, Les, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, this is going to be a lovely item. This is going to be gorgeous.
Alrighty, I'm up again, and for my second choice, brand new Epic collection coming out from Marvel Comics. This is entitled X-Men, Always Darkest Before Their Dawn. And this is actually a collection. This is kind of an unusual collection because these are all stories not from the X-Men books, because after the last collection ended all the original stories from the late 60s, early 70s. And the X-Men book, which for some of those who do not realize that, for a while was actually was canceled, but they were doing reprints for a long time. Almost 30 issues, something like that. And until Giant Size X-Men came out, and then X-Men 94, and then that's when with the new group. So this collection is actually all the appearances of the team during that time, such as Amazing Spider-Man, Marvel Team Up, Avengers, Captain America, Defenders. It also includes Giant Size Fantastic Four number 4, which is the first appearance of Matrox, the Multiple Man. Also includes Incredible Hulk 180 through 182, which is the first appearance of Wolverine. And also Amazing Adventures 11 through 17, which was Beast's solo series, in which he took the serum thinking they would cure him of his mutant abilities, and if anything, it turned him into the gray fur creature that he was for a brief period of time before he turned blue. So, interesting collection of basically guest appearances and that kind of thing. But it's gonna be cool. It's a nice little book in between the passing of a baton between the original team and then the new team. So
yeah, it's cool to see all that stuff in one place for sure.
Yeah, I mean that doesn't happen a lot. So that's kind of cool that they actually did that. Alrighty, Les.
For my second choice, I would just want to thank Keenspot for finally doing it. They're doing a spoof of Rob Liefeld's characters in the book X Liefelds. This is a collection of some of Liefeld's memorable and least known characters. These are characters that he created for various publications, and he's bringing them together. You have people like Bloodstain, Pitbull, Treadmill, Yard Waste, and Extra. So these characters appeared in various books, like I said, and now they're being brought together in a spoof. So Thank you, Teen Spot, and carry on.
So is Rob Liefeld involved in this book at all?
No, he is not.
Oh.
And that's what I like about it.
That'll be interesting then, yeah.
Wow. Alrighty, Liz.
All right. My second pick I'm really excited about. Remember last week how I went on my long spew about Jared Way? Well, see, this week I'll save you from that because I told you last week.
Oh, good.
His brother Mikey, the one that I was telling you about that really suffered with mental health issues, has gotten together with Sean Simons, and they're doing a comic book called The Collapser. And just so happens, the main guy in the story, he suffers from anxiety. He's kind of living this life where he's trying to hold everything together. He's a nurse. He DJs at night, but he really enjoys the music. And like a lot of people, music is like saving his life. It's the only thing he's living for. Well, one day, he gets a black hole in the mail. Yes, a black hole. Well, he kind of wears it like the Tazerac, and it transforms him into another person. He's got more confidence. He's becoming famous. But now the big issue is who sent it to him and why did they send it to him? So it should be a good story. Like I said, I'm excited. This is Mikey's first story. The only bad reviews I've heard so far, and I usually leave it in the background, but I want to tell you guys because I feel this is going to be such a good comic book. Any first issue, there's a lot of groundwork to lay, especially when it's a new character and you don't know a lot about him. So there are quite a few narration bubbles to lay this story out. But they said after the first one, it gets better. So if you can get past that, it's a really awesome story. It's told by a guy who probably knows this subject better than anyone, especially, like I said, with Sean Simons. It should be amazing. So check this one out. It's also coming from the DC Animal line, or Young Animal line. So Collapser, number 1.
Sounds kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm curious how he wears a black hole. Seems like he'd get sucked in, you know.
He wears it very carefully.
Yeah. Although, haven't you run across a few people that you'd like to throw into a black hole?
It's too late at night to go down that rabbit hole.
Like I said, it should be pretty good. I'm excited about this one.
Cool.
Yeah, this was on my radar too, so that's cool.
Yeah.
Alrighty, and our honorable mention this week is...
Our honorable mention this week comes from IDW, and this is a graphic novel called They Called Us Enemy. This is one that's been kind of a long time coming. I mean, we've been hearing bits and bobs about this for a while. This is a story written by George Takei. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because he was Mr. Sulu from Star Trek. And he's been, that guy, exactly. Talk about your trademarks,
Right.
trademark lines. But yeah, I mean, he's been one of those people that has been a very public figure for a while on certain equal rights issues, and part of that. That he's finally the story he's finally telling now. He wrote a stage. I don't remember if it was a stage play or a musical. I think it was just a stage play about his family's experience in the Japanese internment camps in World War II. Well, that's what this graphic novel is about. It's his story from those camps when he was just a kid. He was just a little kid. He was like 4 years old when they went in, and so this is kind of an important story,
Mm-hmm.
and it's finally getting told, and it's coming out in graphic novel form.
Yeah.
I seem to remember this being announced about maybe this time last year. I think it was during San Diego, around there or something like that.
Yeah, it's been a little while.
Yeah.
And of course, giving what's been going on in the news, it's kind of timely. So, but yeah, I'm interested in reading this story. Although we know it's not going to be a happy story, but it's a story that must be told because it happened.
It did.
It's a real story. It really happened in this country.
Yes.
For no other reason than who they were.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Where
That's
they came
what was
from.
sad. Yeah.
It didn't have anything to do with them as individuals.
No.
It was.
Didn't do anything wrong. Hadn't given them a reason to dislike them or distrust them. Just if you were Japanese, we locked you up and
If you were,
kept an eye on you.
If you were of Japanese descent.
Yeah.
Not even if you were from Japan. If
There's descent.
If you
Yeah.
Yes, if your ancestors basically were from Japan, you were locked up.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Any special shout-outs or mentions this week?
Well, I have one that I would like to mention. Today, I'm a big Disney fan, and a Disney star, Cameron Boyce, at age 20, passed away today. So I've been watching a lot of Disney. He was in The Descendants. He played with Adam Sandler in Grown Ups 2. Just very, very talented kid. It's sad when, my kids grew up watching this kid on the TV screen, and then you hear that he passed away at 20. My kids are just starting life and figuring it out, and it's sad that he'll never get that chance. He's already had so much, but it would have been amazing to see what he would have become. So, very sad. And any kid at the age of 20, it's sad to pass away. But like I said, this one just kind of hit home when a daily figure on your TV screen for years in your home,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I did see that, and obviously our thoughts are with his family and loved ones and fans, and of course, Disney company.
See, that's even sadder is his fans are a bunch of little kids who have probably never even experienced a puppy dying, and now one of their heroes or teen idols is now. So my thoughts are definitely with the parents and the kids tonight.
Yeah, that's rough.
Mm-hmm. Definitely rough.
Any other mentions?
Not me.
I do want to take a couple moments to acknowledge an end of an era that's going to be approaching us. The news came out this past week that Mad Magazine will cease publications here in the not too distant future. I think original material will be ending here real soon, and then they'll be doing reprints to fulfill subscription requirements, and then the magazine is going away after 67 years of publications.
Wow.
That's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We've mentioned Mad before when we did our tribute to Sergio Aragonés. I grew up reading Mad Magazine, Cracked Magazine, and later Crazy Magazine, which was done by Marvel, which was kind of in the same vein. But I was a fan of Mad Magazine. It was always fun with Alfred E. Newman and all that. So I'm kind of sad that this is happening. But I've also mentioned on when I acknowledged this happening on Twitter that I have picked up a couple copies in the last few years after not reading them in a long time. and it was a different book. It seemed. I try not to be one of these that things were so much better before or when I was younger, this kind of thing. I try not to be that kind of thing, that kind of person. So this is going to kind of sound like that, and that's not the way I'm intending it. It wasn't funny. It seemed like the page count was less for so much more money, and one of the things I really loved were the parody ads. The parody ads, for the most part, were gone. They were replaced by real ads.
Huh.
So I'm going, what's going on here? I mean, but the only thing that I really enjoyed was the Al Jaffe fold-in at the back, which was a tradition. Every magazine has the fold-in on the back page. So I'm sad that it's gone, but I'm kind of not surprised.
Yeah, maybe it was time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but someone brought up a good point. I can't remember his name. He was a writer, and he was a writer for Tidal and Vertigo. And so you probably see where I'm going with this. He mentioned, okay, Vertigo gets relaunched last year, and then it's canceled. Mad Magazine gets relaunched last year, and then it's canceled. What has changed in the past year? And then he puts up a headline about AT&T buying Time Warner.
Oh.
Interesting. So you're going, he may have a point, but who knows? We'll never know the truth. But I thought we should mention the fact that Mad Magazine is going away. Unless they decide to do something with it. Cracked Magazine is now online. Is a website.
Yeah.
So, maybe Mad Magazine may do something similar. Be like the Onion or Cracked Magazine or that kind of thing. But who knows?
Right.
We'll see.
Yeah, I agree. The end of an era.
Yeah.
Alrighty. We'll move on to our normal shout outs then. Obviously want to thank Pop Goes the Culture for allowing us to be part of their podcast network. If you check our show notes, we'll have a link there. We can check out some of our fellow podcast mates. Definitely go check out their shows. And while you're at it, go to Twitter and do a search, hashtag Podern Family. Check out some great shows there from our fellow podcasters who have been so kind and gracious to share the word of the fellowship. Definitely go check them out. Just download some of their episodes and have a blast. I also want to thank Manny the Martyr for supplying their music to the podcast. We'll have a link to their show notes to their music in the show notes. So thank you guys. Definitely check out their music. And finally, you, dear listener, thank you for downloading and listening to today's episode. We always appreciate your support. We'd love to hear from you. If you have a comment, suggestion, question, comment, complaint, whatever, we'd love to hear from you. And there are several ways you can do that. Our email address is email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. Or you can go to the website and you can check out our About Us page, and there's a contact form that you can fill out if you so choose. We invite you to follow us on social media. As I mentioned earlier, we're on Facebook, The Fellowship of the Geeks. And we're obviously on Twitter, @Fellowship Geeks. If you like to follow our personal Twitter accounts, by all means. Mike can be found @MikeyGeek. Liz can be found @LN_Geek. And I can be found @TomTCGeek. And when you're downloading our episodes, we would greatly appreciate it if you take a couple minutes to rate and review our show. Thank you very, very much. Is there anything else before we say goodbye?
Just thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate you listening.
Thank you once again for listening, everybody. We do appreciate your support. And until next time, geek on, my friends.
We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook at The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter at Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,